Have you ever wondered what really sparked off the Second World War? It was a global conflict that forever altered our world. A clash of ideologies, nations, and peoples that left no corner of the globe untouched. It was more than just a war. It was a turning point in human history. But what ignited this cataclysmic event? What were the factors that set the stage for this epic struggle? Let's dive into the depths of history and unravel the truth. The seeds of the Second World War were sown long before the first shot was fired. In the aftermath of the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles was presented as a means of ensuring peace. However, it proved to be a catalyst for future conflict. The treaty placed full blame for the war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, saddling them with crippling reparations that devastated their economies. Germany in particular was plunged into an economic crisis. Hyperinflation spiraled out of control, rendering the German mark virtually worthless. The middle class was wiped out, savings were obliterated, and a sense of national humiliation pervaded. The once mighty nation was brought to its knees, creating a fertile ground for resentment and radical ideologies to take root. It was in this climate of despair and anger that a charismatic speaker named Adolf Hitler rose to prominence. Hitler, a decorated veteran of the First World War, blamed Germany's misfortunes on the Treaty of Versailles and the politicians who had agreed to it. His rhetoric tapped into the widespread discontent, and his promises of national revival resonated deeply with those who felt betrayed and abandoned by their leaders. Under the banner of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party as it was commonly known, Hitler promised to restore Germany's honor and wealth. His charismatic speeches, filled with nationalistic and anti-Semitic rhetoric, garnered him a devoted following. By the early 1930s, Hitler had risen to the position of chancellor and then dictator, consolidating his power and implementing policies that directly contravened the Treaty of Versailles. Despite international objections, Hitler continued to rearm Germany, effectively tearing up the Treaty of Versailles. He annexed Austria and then the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia in a series of aggressive moves that went largely unchallenged by the international community. This failure to act emboldened Hitler and set a dangerous precedent. It was clear that the peace so dearly won in the aftermath of the First World War was fragile and under threat. And so, with tension mounting, the world stood on the precipice of a devastating conflict. The fuse was lit, and in 1939 the world was plunged into war. The stage was set for one of the most brutal conflicts in history, with Germany's audacious invasion of Poland. This act of aggression was the final straw, a blatant violation of the Treaty of Versailles that had been established in the aftermath of the First World War. In the early hours of September 1st, 1939, without a formal declaration of war, Germany's well-oiled war machine rolled into Poland. The Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, was a new and terrifying form of warfare. It was fast, it was furious, and it was devastatingly effective. The Polish forces were ill-prepared for such an onslaught, and despite their brave efforts, they were quickly overwhelmed. But this was not just a war between Germany and Poland. It was a war that would soon engulf the entire world. Britain and France, bound by treaties to Poland, had no choice but to respond. On September 3rd, both countries declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of their involvement in the Second World War. But the conflict did not stop there. It spread like wildfire across Europe. The German forces, with their aggressive tactics and superior weaponry, seemed unstoppable. They stormed through the Low Countries and France with astonishing speed, forcing the British to make a desperate evacuation from Dunkirk. Meanwhile, in the east, the Soviet Union seized the opportunity to reclaim territories lost in the First World War, invading eastern Poland later in September. This was not a war confined to one region or one continent. It was a global conflict touching every corner of the world. In the span of just a few months, the world changed dramatically. Nations were drawn into the conflict. Alliances were formed and broken, and the world was set on a path from which there would be no turning back. The world was now caught in the throes of a brutal and far-reaching war. As the war raged on, the tide of battle began to turn. As nations grappled with the harsh realities of war, the balance of power began to shift. Key turning points in the war emerged, dramatically altering the course of history. One such turning point was the Battle of Stalingrad. This brutal clash between the Soviet Union and Germany spanned over 5 months, from August 1942 to February 1943. The city of Stalingrad was reduced to rubble, but the Soviet Union's determination was unyielding. The Red Army successfully encircled and trapped the German Sixth Army, marking a significant turning point in the war. The invincible German war machine had been dealt a severe blow, and the tide of war began to shift in favor of the Allies. Following this, another pivotal moment arrived with the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944. The largest seaborne invasion in history saw the Allied forces storm the beaches of Normandy, France. This audacious operation marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The Western Front was opened, and the Allies began their relentless push towards Berlin. Yet the war was far from over. The Pacific Theater was still a hotbed of conflict, but the game-changing moment came with the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. These devastating events forced Japan to surrender unconditionally, marking the end of World War II. The world had witnessed the unimaginable destructive power of nuclear weapons, and the landscape of warfare was forever altered. These turning points, from Stalingrad to the D-Day landings and finally, the atomic bombings, were pivotal moments in the war. Each event represented a significant shift in power, altering the trajectory of the conflict and propelling the world towards the end of the most devastating war in human history. With these decisive events, the end was in sight. In 1945, the guns finally fell silent, but the world was forever changed. The end of the war was not marked by a grand victory parade, but by the sigh of relief from the millions who had been living under the shadow of this conflict. After 6 years of relentless warfare, the world was ready for peace. The peace treaties that followed, notably the Potsdam Agreement and the Paris Peace Treaties, were more than just signatures on paper. They were a promise, a commitment to never let such a devastating war occur again. They were an acknowledgement of the mistakes of the past and a pledge to learn from them, to build a world where conflicts could be resolved without resorting to violence. In the wake of the war, nations came together to form the United Nations, an organization dedicated to maintaining international peace and security. The UN was a beacon of hope in a world scarred by war, a testament to humanity's ability to rise from the ashes and strive for a better future. But as the world moved towards peace, another conflict was brewing: the Cold War. The world was divided once again, this time not by a physical battlefield, but by ideological differences. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, their rivalry setting the stage for decades of political tension and proxy wars. The aftermath of World War II was not just about rebuilding cities and restoring economies, it was about healing the psychological wounds of a generation that had seen the horrors of war firsthand. It was about confronting and dealing with the atrocities committed during the war, from the Holocaust to the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The scars of World War II are still visible today, a stark reminder of a dark chapter in our history. They remind us of the cost of conflict, of the damage that can be caused when nations choose war over dialogue. But they also remind us of our capacity for resilience and our ability to come together in the face of adversity. The lessons of World War II continue to resonate, a testament to our collective memory and our shared history. So, what really started World War II? The answer is not simple. It was a complex web of factors, a storm of political and social unrest, economic distress, and power struggles that spiraled into the most devastating conflict in human history. The prelude to the war was marked by the rise of fascism, Nazism, and militarism. The world watched as Hitler's Third Reich expanded, violating the Treaty of Versailles, while Japan invaded Manchuria, defying the League of Nations. The outbreak of war was inevitable, with the invasion of Poland acting as the fuse that ignited the global conflict. The tide of war turned with notable events such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the invasion of Normandy. These were the turning points where the Allies began to reclaim their lost territories, pushing back the Axis powers. The aftermath was a world forever changed. Nations were left in ruins, millions of lives were lost, and the global map was redrawn. Yet, from the ashes of destruction, the seeds of a new world order were sown. The United Nations was formed, committed to maintaining international peace and security, and the process of decolonization began, reshaping the political landscape. And so we return to our initial question: what really started World War II? But perhaps the more important question is, what has World War II taught us? The lessons of World War II are a testament to the power of humanity to endure, to learn, and to strive for a better future.